Hey everyone, this is Captain Steve Roger from Into the Blue TV. And as soon as I feel a little break from this heat, I know that hunting season's upon us. Actually, the first time I ever went hunting, a buddy took me. Wasn't my father or my grandfather. In fact, I took my father on his very first hunt. Well, Academy Sports and Outdoor Stores has everything to gear up for the field for less. Plus, you can shop a wide selection of ammo, shotguns, deer corn, rifle, feeder, game cameras, camo, and more from the brands you trust. Text HUNT24 to 22369 to take $20 off a $100 purchase when you shop hunting supplies at academy.com. Need a hunting license? Pick it up in store while you're shopping.
On this episode of The Rookies, we've got an adult-onset hunter who saw the climate impact of the industrial meat system on her birthplace of Hawaii and started on a journey to more responsibly and sustainably source her meat from wild fish and game. Along the way, she found new community and a renewed hope for how we tackle some of today's biggest issues. You're not going to want to miss this episode.
So, if you're someone that wants to make sure that our planet is thriving for our kids and our grandkids and future generations, and you buy into the established science that the reason why our planet is becoming increasingly hostile to humans is because we're spewing greenhouse gas emissions into the air, then the industrial meat system in which we live is not only inhumane to animals and full of chemicals and antibiotics, but it's also releasing a lot of carbon emissions into the air. So for all those reasons, you often hear people say like, oh, being vegan is the best way to support climate change. And I just don't think that is a practical way to move forward in the climate change fight. Like, we can't expect everyone to be vegan. There's something about meat eating that is so ancestral to people, that is so important, that is a part of their identity. And as a meat eater, as an avowed meat eater, I think that we should interrogate the downsides of the industrial meat system, while also, finding ways to participate in feeding ourselves and our families in a way that is more sustainable.
Welcome to the Wild Fish and Game Podcast's new show, The Rookies, presented by Harvesting Nature, a podcast series exploring the food journeys of adult-onset hunters, anglers, and foragers. I'm your host, Ken Chapman. I'm a newbie hunter, a poor angler, wannabe forager, amateur cook, and full-time eater who is on a journey to know where my food comes from and have some great meals with good friends along the way. This series is for us and by us, the first-timers, the newbies, the rookies. In each episode, we'll meet new hunters, anglers, and foragers, real people discussing real food on a real adventure to learn how to put wild fish, game, and forageables into everyday meals. We'll learn what inspired them and how they're building their knowledge and skills. We'll talk about their experiences in the field and at the table. Most importantly, what keeps them coming back for more.
I'm Steph Spears, and up until recently, I was running a solar company for the last decade. Before that, I worked in campaigns and government. And I'm originally from Hawaii, which a lot of people, I feel like, have a relationship to because they visited it or have dreamed about it. And yet there's so many beautiful places in the world, and so many of them are special. But what makes Hawaii really special is that every aspect of the culture and all of the people are suffused by Native Hawaiian values. And Native Hawaiians are what make Hawaii special. And they have a couple of tenets and values that they bring to everything. One is aloha aina, which is the idea of loving the land. Another is malama aina, which means to take care of the land. And I grew up with those values, and they've unexpectedly suffused my own career as well.
How did the idea of loving and taking care of the land influence your moral and ethical choices about where your food comes from?
Up until recently, it didn't, outside of, trying to shop responsibly at a grocery store. About 4 years ago, in the midst of the pandemic, not unlike so many people across the country, I was desperate for not only open space and open air, but a closer relationship to the land. I've always loved the outdoors. I grew up near the ocean as an island person. When you grow up on an island, you not only see your surrounding of the island as a fixed resource, but you come to view land much like indigenous people do, which is that the land is a ancestor. It's another being that you have a relationship to, and it's scarce, and you have to take care of it because you are nourished by it. And if you nourish the land, it nourishes you in return. So taking care of the land is also a relationship of connection and reciprocity with the ecosystem around you. In fact, if more people thought of our planet as an island in which we really are a fixed resourced island as a planet, then I think we would all be better off, and we would view how we eat and how we use resources differently. But like I said, up until recently, I really was just trying to buy decent quality meat, trying to eat as locally as possible in season. And during the pandemic, I got highly interested in hunting and spearfishing. And spearfishing came as an interest primarily because growing up in an island, I actually did not become very comfortable with the ocean. I have a family that does not like sand or sun or salt water. And so I grew up not really going to the ocean, and I wanted to get over that fear during the pandemic. So I took a free diving course, and free diving is an incredible pursuit in which you take a breath of air at the surface and you dive somewhere between, it could be as little as 20 feet. It could be as much as 300 feet, which is what the record holders do. But you go pretty deep pretty quickly. And when you get down to where the coral are, up until right around 50 feet, and you get closer to the fish, and you discover a whole new world. I don't understand why people want to go to Mars when we have the ocean. And it was in discovering the wildlife underwater and that I became introduced to spearfisher people. And these were people who were able to take part in fishing in the most sustainable way possible because they could be the most targeted about their catch. And there was a challenge involved with spearfishing because you have to hold your breath and hold it for minutes at a time and calm your nerves and calm the panic in your body, that panicky feeling in your chest when you're underwater and you want to breathe. You actually, that panicky feeling is what they call a contraction in freediving. It's just your body's reaction to carbon dioxide building up. You don't actually need oxygen for minutes more. And so when you feel that panicky feeling, in freediving, they teach you to calm down. And then that contraction, that feeling in your chest goes away, which is an incredible thing. So you realize that just because you have the urge to panic, just because you have the urge to breathe, does not mean you need oxygen. That is also, as it turns out, a great lesson for calming yourself in times of stress in life above the surface. And so I got addicted to this sport in which it is diligent practice in calming down. And the more you were calm, the closer fishes would come into you. Most people think spearfishing is going down and diving and chasing fish. And really, that's not the way to be successful, because fish, as it turns out, are way better at swimming than we are. And the water plays tricks with your eyes. If you're underwater, everything seems 25% bigger and 25% closer to you than it actually is, because of the distortion of the visuals underwater. So you're holding your breath, you're being swayed by the ocean waves, you're trying to calm the panicky feeling in your chest, and it's only in calming your mind do you realize that you can surpass that panic, and then you can select your fish. And in selecting your fish and hopefully targeting it well and shooting it, you get to provide for your community and give them a source of protein that is clean, or, organic, had a good life, and doesn't serve the local ecosystem. Like I only shoot invasive fish or fish that are plentiful, and so that initial foray into spearfishing and free diving is what led me to hunting, because I am from Hawaii, but I live in DC normally most of the year, and DC does not have great spearfishing. You have to go 3 hours away on a good day. So I started to hunt and be interested in hunting, and it was you that told me about a class to attend to hunt some invasive pigs in northern Texas. And that ended up being my first harvest. I had tried to hunt beforehand quite unsuccessfully, and since then have been harvesting animals. And so it's been a journey to source more sustainable sources of meat. And all of it actually comes back to the fact that I love meat. I am a meat eater, but I struggle with the fact that the science says that meat eating is a source of greater carbon emissions than plant-based eating. And as someone who works in clean energy and climate, I found that for me, hunting was a way that I could eat meat joyfully amidst that context.
I see how that philosophy was put into action, but there had to be a lot of barriers along the way of becoming an adult-onset hunter.
One of the things that I think is so hard about starting out in hunting as an adult, as you call it, adult-onset hunter, is generally folks like that don't come up in a culture or have a childhood of hunting. And so by nature, that means that you lack social networks around hunting. And my first deer harvest, I came from a class offered through some hunters in Virginia and the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Club, kind of a joint venture. These two hunters in Virginia put together mentored hunts every year, every fall, and they're so wonderful. There are two of them, Rachel and Wade. They are two folks who also discovered hunting in their adulthood and then have since totally reorganized their life so that they can hunt every weekend. And because they discovered it later in life, they feel strongly about giving back that knowledge to people who haven't grown up with it, which is an incredible service. They can also be found on Instagram at Elevated Wild. They have excellent pictures and content and great lives that people should follow. But anyway, Rachel and Wade are great hunters themselves, so generous with their knowledge. And so I joined a mentored hunt with them that they ran in a nature preserve in Virginia. And it was a 5-week sort of adventure where the first day it was a scouting day. So we walked around with Wade and Rachel and they recruit other mentors for the other newbie hunters. And so everyone's walking around with their mentor scouting. And it was the first time I'd ever scouted. I had done other hunting before, but had never scouted and didn't realize the importance of it. And it's one of my favorite parts actually now. The thing about scouting is that you go off trail and you really learn more about animal behavior, which is an important facet of being a successful hunter. And the more I do hunting, the more I realize that actual hunt is such a small part of the overall process and experience. So they taught us about scraping and finding deer, the deer kind of mating behavior, and they we looked for signs of deer, and it was the first time that I really felt I was noticing things in the land that I hadn't noticed in a lifetime of hiking. And there's something about going off trail that makes me feel more free, more in touch with ancestors who didn't have trails and paved roads by which to hunt. And another side of scouting I've realized recently is that there's a lot of foraging out there to do. So the last time I went scouting a couple weeks ago, we came back with all these beautiful mushrooms that I had never foraged before, including cauliflower mushroom, coral mushroom, lion's mane. So scouting itself was a revelatory experience. And then the next week it was learning how to shoot a shotgun. And then the next experience was learning how to put up a tree stand and figuring out where's the best place to put a tree stand. And then came a lesson in how to butcher. And then the last was the actual hunting.
So you'd put in all this time and study into this mentored hunt program. What was the first day of hunting like?
So you show up at, well before sunrise, a couple hours before sunrise. And then I went out with my mentor and we sat in a tree stand. And it was around the full moon. And I've done a couple of hunts around full moons, and it makes you realize how the moon will change animal behavior, because we didn't see anything that morning. And like so many hunts I've been on, even if you don't get anything, you still learn so much. I remember watching the sunrise and all the colors change in the sky and thinking, even if this is my only experience today, this would be well worth the early morning wake up for a non-morning person. And so we, had break for lunch, and then we went back out in the afternoon. And nobody in the entire nature preserve, probably around 10 hunters, nobody saw any deer that morning, which was really strange because we covered a big area and there were supposed to be a lot of deer out there. And then in the afternoon, right around 3 p.m., I'm sitting in the tree stand, and a deer pops out, and I can't believe it, and it crosses kind of just out under me, in front of me, and I, rookie mistake, pull up my shotgun, and of course the deer sees me with that movement and bounds away. And I'm devastated because we've been out there for 7 hours and we haven't seen anything. And I messed up my chance. And then, we're quietly reflecting on that loss. And 20 minutes later, out of the corner of our eyes, we see another buck pop up. A couple years, maybe 3 years old, I think was what we found out later. 3-year-old buck, couple points. And my mentor whispers, expect that it will go in the exact same direction as the other buck did. And so this time I'm ready. I have my gun up, and I'm positioned where the other buck pass, and I see the shot through the rifle, not rifle, the shotgun, and I pull the trigger, and I have forgotten to take the safety off. Classic. And so I'm devastated again, and like fumbling, and I can hear my heart in my ears, and I see the deer just continue to walk away, and I'm like, oh my God, I flub second time today. I'm useless. And then my mentor, who's on the hunt with me, blows into their deer call, and suddenly the deer stops and turns back. And there's brush in between us, so it doesn't see us. And that's when I'm able to take a shot, and it drops suddenly. And it's there for a couple minutes before we get down to check it out. And I couldn't believe that I'd gotten not a second chance, but a third chance. And I couldn't believe that, it was only in teamwork that I was able to take a shot. It's a lesson that I've had multiple times in spearfishing and hunting since then, that it's really the team and the community. That's what keeps me coming back. So that was the first buck harvest. I sucked, and then because we get by with the help of our friends, I got to harvest the meat.
Walking up on that deer for the first time, what were you thinking? And what did you learn about yourself?
Anytime I pull a trigger on an animal, I don't think this is unique. I can hear time slows down. I can hear my heartbeat rapidly, and I'm trying to force myself to breathe slowly such that my heart rate slows down, such that I can take the shot calmly. And there's always a sense of grieving for the animal too. Like I don't enjoy the kill. I hunt because as a meat eater, I don't think I should outsource that activity. That it's important that if I eat the meat, that I should be comfortable with the action and the cost that entails, and in order to honor the animal and the life you took, you have a responsibility to eat as much of the meat as possible, and to be a responsible participant in the ecosystem. I hunt because I like being a participant in the ecosystem. I don't like outsourcing it to poor industrial practices or other people to take care of the dirty work for me. But I don't enjoy the taking of the life. So it's a weird line to walk. So walking up to the deer, I always feel, like adrenaline is coursing through my body. And I also feel glad that I am able to take responsibility for something that the vast majority of people don't. And so, walking up to the deer, I always take a couple minutes to touch the deer and thank the deer as a minor ritual of honoring the deer. And after that, part of the lesson was not over. The lesson in field dressing, and then dragging the animal back, and then processing it. In this part of Virginia, because of chronic wasting disease, you have to quarter the deer. You can't just take the deer whole. So that followed. And by the time I, left with the deer, it was well after dark. And I actually, Wade is a very talented processor. So after quartering, I asked him to take the deer to process, because he used to be an executive chef. So he makes the best venison sausage ever. and he also does the processing services for folks. And and he's like, you take the backstrap home, take the heart home though, because you have to eat that fresh. So I have a plastic shopping bag with my heart and my backstraps. And I drive home and we cook the heart that night and the backstraps the next day. And eating heart is very normal for hunters. And I think people outside of hunting think it's horrifying. And I find that gap really fascinating, you know, that a heart is but a muscle. And it is, in fact, incredibly delicious. And it need not have a lot of accoutrements when you're cooking it because it's such high quality meat. And you know, Wade was like, you should even tartare it. And I was like, oh, interesting. I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet because of my mental hangups about raw heart. And he's like, well, that quality meat is going to be way better than any tartare you find in a restaurant. And he's right. You know, we have so many qualms about eating different things that go away when you take the life of an animal, that have to go away, because why would you waste any part of it? So hunting has taught me to value animal meat more. It's taught me to value every part of the animal. It's taught me to love animals more. It's taught me more about animal behavior. It's taught me that humans are actually not that different from animals, as it turns out. We have a lot of similar behavior. As for example, we hunt deer when they're in the rut, when they're mating, because they kind of lose their mind when they're mating, and they like traipse out and do unsafe things like walk out during daylight. And that's not unlike humans' 20s. You know, everyone's kind of turns into a dummy in their 20s when they're trying to mate. So there's a lot of stuff like that that have been really instructive. And I think about that every time I think about that first time eating heart.
Oh, to be young and in love, and more than a lot dumb. At this point, you're bringing in a lot of wild game and seafood. How are you cooking this up? What are your go-to recipes?
Before I started hunting, I tried to get my husband into hunting, and he was not as interested in it. He spearfishes with me, but he's not as interested in firearms. And so the deal was that I will bring home the bacon, so to speak, and he will cook it. So I have to share cooking credit with my husband, Nico. He's very, very talented in the kitchen. But a lot of what we do is, you know, classic low and slow stuff. Canada Adam from Harvesting Nature gave me his like braising recipe, and that's been a classic for us. And you know, it obviously depends on the meat. Like when I'm harvesting boar versus venison versus duck versus rabbit, requires different care. But you know, on a day that we are super busy and we don't have a whole lot of time, we will put it in a slow cooker. On the days that we have a little more time, we'll braise. We've recently gotten more into sous videing, and I am experimenting with smoking more. I mean, having that responsibility to take care of the meat that comes with taking an animal's life has taught me actually a lot more about barbecuing than I ever thought of prior to this. And I love barbecue. So I think we try to cook each meat differently. And then there's always Wade's delicious sausages that we enjoy from the deer.
Oh, that's some good eats right there. Now, what kind of advice would you have for someone who is interested in spearfishing or hunting?
I think there's one part of the advice that is super tactical and say, okay, what are the next steps in which I am interested intellectually in this thing? I watched a bunch of YouTube videos and I want to do it. If you want to spearfish, go take a free diving level 1 course. They're pretty much everywhere. If you're so lucky and privileged, like, you should definitely travel to my home island of Oahu, and there are excellent free diving instructors there. But you could go to Florida. You could do it in a pool in around most cities, and there are always free diving courses. So you could go to Free Diving Instructors International, FII. That's one form of the free diving instruction, and look up classes, or just type your town plus free diving courses. And then the other real incredible community that I found as a late onset hunter in online is one Facebook groups for both spearfishing and for hunting. People are incredibly generous with their time and answering questions from nothing newbies about it, and that's actually how I found people to go spearfishing with in Hawaii. I would say, like, hi, I would love to buy lunch for someone who would take me out spearfishing, and I can definitely do the safety stuff. That's really important to do before you ask someone to help you. You have to make sure you take a class and are safety certified. But I could dive to 50 to 80 feet, and someone took me out, and then I found another person to take me out. And when I go home now, those are the people I call to go out, and they've introduced me to other hunters. And I told you the reasons why I started hunting and spearfishing, but the reasons why I've stayed in it is because I'm so floored by the generosity of people who do want to teach and are so generous with their time, because ultimately they're very afraid of the fact that the hunters in America, the number of hunters is generally on decline. There's some question about methodology and how we count hunters. Like, we don't have a great way of counting hunters, as it turns out, in this country, but it's certainly not the peak it was in the 1980s when it was like 23 million hunters. Now it's something like 14.4 million hunters in the country. So that's all to say, people really want to teach, and so go on Facebook groups and find them. The other resource I've found is that I wish I'd known about is mentored hunts. And if you Google your state plus mentored hunt, chances are there's a mentored hunt offered sometime once or twice a year by your state for free. It's incredible. It's for free, and they'll take you out and show you the ropes. Also, hunter education courses. Like, people stop at basic hunter education and they get their license, and then they don't realize there's so much more hunter education classes that are offered by every state. Virginia, in particular, is excellent at hunter education courses, from bow hunting to duck hunting. I've taken, small game squirrel hunting through them. So, just astounded that these classes are free. And then another source that I've been really blown away by is Becoming an Outdoor Woman workshops. A lot of states, not every state, but a lot of state offers these workshops. They're called BOW, B-O-W, Becoming an Outdoors Woman. Groups of women who want to learn how to become outdoors women. And so you register for classes like it's college, and the classes are like turkey hunting, squirrel hunting, Dutch oven cooking over an open fire, canning venison. It's like coolest classes. And through that, I've taken more archery classes. I've taken fish cooking classes and filleting classes. I've taken turkey hunting classes. And then you're in this community of women who all are interested in similar things and come from all different walks of life. So those are, and then the last one is Hunters of Color. That is an organization where, particularly as an Asian American woman, I don't often see that many people that look like me in the hunting community. So Hunters of Color is an organization that tries to train, recruit, create a community for hunters of color, and they have chapters all across the country and ambassadors all across the country. So those are some organizations that I've tapped into and been really astounded by their generosity of resources and support, and I hope new hunters feel armed to take those steps too, because a lot of it starts just online and building relationships and then just showing up and then showing up again and again. The last thing I'll say about these classes in Virginia, there's a guy, Aaron, who's one of the instructors there, and I love Aaron. He didn't grow up in a hunting family, but was really interested in hunting, and his eye doctor is the one that brought him hunting and taught him hunting. And it was that experience of someone else taking the care and time to show him how to hunt that is the reason why he's a hunting instructor today, that he volunteers his Saturdays to teach newbies like me how to hunt. And every time I see Aaron, he gives me a big bear hug and he's like, "What up, buddy? It's good to see you." And every time I go to show up to one of these classes, he goes, "Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for spending your time with us." And I'm like, "Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for teaching. You're the one volunteering." And I think that is indicative of the kind of welcome and warm reception that is waiting for people when they try something new like hunting. It's a really warm community. It's a really generous community, and there's a lot of misconceptions about hunters. And what this country needs more than anything is for people to show up in spaces they haven't been before and be good people and be giving people and connect with one another. So for the people who are interested but don't know how to start, just show up and the world will open to you in a way that will profoundly instill a sense of hope in this country, I think.
I want to thank Steph for sharing her story and the gentle reminder to show up, be good people, share of your talents, and be grateful for the folks you meet along the way. In the last few years, there have been millions of adult-onset hunters, anglers, and foragers who have stepped into the woods looking for game, cast a line to a rising trout, or harvested wild edibles for the first time. Each one of us has a story. We got into hunting, fishing, and foraging to find something. Maybe it was to feel a deep sense of purpose, or to make a connection to nature, seize on a lifelong dream, or simply find a better way to get some good eats. We're going to let a few rookies tell their story, and in those stories, maybe we'll find a little inspiration, build some community, and have a greater connection to things that matter. We'll see you next time on The Rookies, presented by Harvesting Nature.